So, Amy, today's guest is Mary Tate, and she brought so much brightness and light into my life. As someone who has a child with some sensory needs, she is an awesome expert and resource for anyone who might be listening in who says, yes, healthy food is great, but how do I get my child who either is picky or has some sensory issues to eat the things that matter most to us? She is not only an expert, but she raised a child into adulthood who had sensory issues. And this resource and this brightness really changed my life during this interview. I loved it. She was very truthful and very honest. And she was like any of us moms who will do anything for their children. What did you think about this episode, Amy?
Absolutely. I think Mary had a wealth of information around feeding her family well, and that will apply, frankly, to anybody listening. As a parent who hasn't dealt with sensory issues, I just found the whole conversation super eye-opening to realize that while I struggle to get my kids to eat vegetables, she had like this whole other level of struggle that I think there are a lot of listeners and a lot of folks out there who will relate. But even if you haven't dealt with sensory issues amongst your kids, I think there are still some fantastic details in here. And most of all, my takeaway was your kids are going to grow up and be thriving adults because you are a parent who cares enough to listen to a podcast about feeding them.
I totally agree with you. That was probably my biggest takeaway, was a big exhale, like, oh my God, they're going to be okay. And I can't wait for everyone to dive in and hear from her and to hear her experience, and also where her why comes from, where her passion and her purpose comes from, and how she's really made it a fantastic career.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and jump in so everyone can hear from Mary Tate.
I'm very excited because today we have Mary Tate on. She's in Denver. She is the owner and operator of Tree of Life Health Coaching. She has 3 children. They're in their teenage years, and one is 20. And I'm excited for everyone to hear from her because she has a very specific business that has been inspired by her oldest. And I can't wait to dive right in. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
We're psyched to have you. I really am looking forward to this conversation. Could you tell us a little bit, start off by just talking about, what feeding your family looks like in your family, whether it's schedule or the type of food or the lifestyle you have?
Sure. Well, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to, I'd have to say probably back when Matthew was born. Matthew's 20 now. We had a lot of struggles with Matthew. He had sensory integration when he was younger, and I was 60 pounds overweight when I was in high school. So I didn't really know a lot about eating healthy or that kind of I was not brought up that way. I was brought up pretty much eating just traditional 70s food, right? I grew up in the 70s. My mom baked, but not a lot. She didn't, it was hamburger helper and that kind of thing. And it wasn't really, we ate out of, like canned foods, or we had frozen. So it wasn't fresh and all the things that, I do now. So when Matthew was born, he did have some problems. And as we got into what was going on with him, I started diving into how I could help him more. So right now, our diet consists mostly of, just fresh fruits and veggies and meats and cheeses. And I have a specific diet plan because I have a lot of food allergies. So I do paleo because for me, that's my health. I need to be gluten-free and dairy-free. And I also need to be grain-free because I have some gut issues and things like that. So that's what I do. It's kind of a challenge sometimes when I'm feeding my family because they're not that way, right? They love their whole grain breads, and they love as far as kale. Like tonight we had kale chips, and we had chicken quesadillas, and we had fruit. And for me, I have to buy a separate thing. I can't buy what I would normally buy for them. So I have to have a specific plan of attack when I do plan our meals, because I have to make sure that I'm not making 10 different things for all of us.
Yeah.
So that's, has been a challenge over the past couple of years. Before that, we were just really, as I, learned about nutrition, trying to help my son, Matthew, we were just diving into, like the whole grains and eating more fruits and veggies and cutting out the processed foods and things like that, where, normally that would be great. But if you have, challenges with food, you can't do whole grains, you can't do gluten, you can't do dairy, then you're like, okay, now what? So I think right now we're at a point where we're all pretty much, on the same pattern of this is what the kids will eat, this is what I eat. I usually don't make special things for any of one of us. It's just for me, if they're eating, say, if I'm making hamburgers and French fries for them, I'll make sweet potato fries for me because I can't have traditional potatoes right now. So, I just have to kind of swap things out. But it's just me that's doing that. So for them, they just get the traditional, healthier food options, because as a health coach, sometimes I think it can be a curse to know what's in the food, So,
Absolutely.
So,
and how are your kids pretty receptive to what you are putting on the table right now?
Yeah, they are. They really are. They have their moments. I mean, they're teenagers, right? And they want their junk, and I'm an 80-20 rule kind of gal, right? So I'm like, okay, that's fine if you eat that. And I try to teach them, this is what this food can do to your body. So we need to kind of see, like my daughter, she loves her donuts and her coffee, and she loves going to all those coffee places and getting stuff. And I'm like, that's great. You can have that in moderation, but you also have to remember that you need to be balancing it out with some fruits and some veggies. So if you're going to, dive into, 2 donuts or whatever, you want to make sure that you're eating some fruit or some vegetables to get your nutrients, because really food is fuel. So that donut isn't going to take you real far. You're going to crash real fast. So I try to teach them that it's food is fuel, and it's not about good or bad or healthy or not or whatever. It's fuel, and what's going to keep your car going the fastest, especially for school and tests and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm big on that phrase. It's fuel first, fun second. Like,
right.
That resonates a lot with me. And it's the thing I'm trying to educate my kids about. And it's a greater approach than sort of, oh, you shouldn't eat that, it'll just make you heavy or whatever. It's like, let's talk about why.
Right, exactly. And we go into the whole, like, she'll get a headache from something, and I'll be like, well, you probably had a sugar crash, right? That was a lot of sugar you put in your body, and your body's just not meant to have that much sugar for that quickly. So we need to kind of balance that out with nuts or whatever, seeds or whatever, something like that. So
it sounds a lot like your own life experience is kind of driven by this. I'm not going to repeat what happened to me or what I did as a child, because it sounds like you were sort of suffering or in your own way. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Just the way I grew up, and I was, like I said, I was 60 pounds overweight, and tried losing weight and tried all the diets and tried all the things, and nothing, right? There was nothing was coming off. And then, I started exercising, imagine that, right? And started, instead of dieting, started exercising. And then naturally, my body wanted to look into, like, oh, well, I love these fruits, and I'll try this, and I'll try something different. And that was also part of, how I helped my son Matthew, because he was very hypersensitive in his mouth and had a lot of oral aversion. So I had to mimic what I was doing, and I had to learn myself how to help him. So it was more of a modeling, so that I could help him accept new foods as well. So it was kind of I still say he taught me a lot. And I tell him that all the time, I said, are your ears ringing? Because I talk about you all the time.
Isn't it funny how the most challenging kid can make you grow in such a way that you never knew you needed to?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. He is just, and he's doing great right now, and just feel very blessed that he's come as far as he has with, his whole sensory integration and ADHD and all that. So it's been a journey, but it's been a good journey for sure.
That's great. What do you think might be your superpower as a mom feeding your family?
I have to say that I am a big label reader. And I love to read labels. And ever since I started, when I was trained as a health coach, I learned, about label reading and what do these words mean and how can this affect your body? And that's what I love, is trying to figure out, okay, so if I'm putting this in my body, what is it going to do to me? Right. And I try to teach my kids that it's not about like, this is bad or this is good. It's like, what is in this food and how is it going to affect your body? So that they'll understand, right? We don't want to put things in our body that you can't pronounce, because why would we, right? So why do you want to put chemicals in your body and things? So we talk about it like that. And I think sometimes, that is my superpower, but that I can do that, but I also think it can be hard because you know a lot, right? You know a lot, and then you question, should I buy that? And maybe I shouldn't buy that. And I know they want that, but I don't want to teach them that, it's bad, but I also need to make them understand that it's not healthiest choice too. So I find myself doing that a lot too, trying to balance it.
Yeah. Agonizing over the details.
Exactly.
Yeah. I forget which doctor I was speaking to, but I remember him saying, don't worry, like the body does know how to detox on small levels. So it's just a matter of not filling it with toxins every single meal, and then occasionally it will know how to process that donut or whatever it is.
Right. Exactly. Because like we have different body parts that do that, right? Our liver, our kidneys, our skin, and all the things, our lungs. So we have, that's how our bodies were created, right? God made our bodies to be able to detox. So we don't need to have gobs of detox drinks and all this and all that to detox. We're made that way. So I agree totally.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that superpower that you're very into the details of the food that your kids are ingesting.
Yeah.
What do you think might be your kryptonite, something that you struggle with?
Oh, something I struggle with: control over what they're eating, I guess, when they're not at my house. Because, when they were little, I could, make all these cute little things for them and say, okay, well, this is this and this is that. My 15-year-old, I remember when we homeschooled as well, my son for a while. And so when my oldest was, we were homeschooling my oldest, and my middle child was probably 3 at the time, 3 or 4. And he would love to peel, the clementines. He would peel clementines for all of us at 3 years old, and so now he's 15. And so I get this bag of clementines. It was just probably about this fall. And I said, will you peel us some clementines? He looked at me like, I don't even want them. I'm like, you used to peel them all the time for us. Mom, I'm not 3. I know, but still.
You don't get the same joy out of it now.
I know. So that's what I think that's hard for me, is to not be able to control like what they're eating at the school, right? I mean, like, our school does have some like, a healthy bar, like of fruits and veggies and things like that. But when I look at the account, like, what did my daughter buy? She bought Chex Mix and she bought, something else. And I'm like, okay, just breathe,
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, you gave them so many years of eating so well under your control that you have to imagine that they're going to start to reread those signals when their body gets out of whack again. And they need to learn things on their own, which is it's going to be so hard for me. My kids are so little. I mean, literally everything that goes in their mouths, I approve of it.
Yeah. And that's exactly how I was. And I think, like I said, as you learn more, and there's so much on the internet, you don't have to be a health coach, right? I mean, there's stuff on the internet that tells you this is great for your kids, this is not, right? There's the Dirty Dozen, there's the Clean 15, there's all the stuff that it's right there for perfect view. And so I think it's just a matter, like you said, of balancing and knowing that their bodies are created to detox naturally. So I totally agree with that. So that would definitely be my kryptonite, though, is just that control piece of, okay, just breathe. Like they were at the fair this weekend, and I was like, okay, I know they're not going to eat great, and that's okay. And I'm going to just accept that and be like, okay, so guess what they ate today? They ate really good.
Yeah. No. And you know what? We were doing an interview with another woman, and she made a point I never thought of, which was that it takes a certain skill set to be able to eat or indulge and then go back and eat healthy again. And it's actually quite a bit more willpower than someone who just never indulges.
Right.
You don't know whether they'll go off the wagon and just be
Right.
fun.
Well, it's kind of funny because my daughter will come up to me and she'll say, you know, after she's eaten some junk, like she'll spend the night at somebody's house and they'll eat junk, right? And she'll come back and, Mom, can I have a salad?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, of course you can have a salad, right? Because I'm never going to turn that down.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, you can have a salad. So, and my son, my middle son eats really well.
Yeah.
But he's always been a really good eater. But as he's gotten older, I've seen him kind of go off the rails, but then he comes back. And so it's just a matter of, like you said, the way you bring them up, you know, it'll like what you're doing, all the stuff you're doing now, it will be the same for you as your kids get older. You know, they'll wander and they'll come back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just a matter of recognizing when it's happening and letting it happen, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are your kids, is there one of your kids that you pretty much know isn't gonna listen? Or, you know, I feel like and even in my life, I'm like, I already know that she's gonna be the one who already will eat well, and this one is gonna go crazy. And, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, with Matthew really struggled. So he had a lot of oral aversion, and we took him for feeding therapy, and we had him in occupational therapy, and we had him in lots of therapies for eating and for feeding and for sensory integration. And so he was definitely my challenge growing up. As we progressed and he accepted more foods, then that's gotten so much easier. Even now, he'll come home from college, and I kind of know certain things for him are still hard. For example, the texture of pork chops, right? I mean, or a pork roast or something. He cannot handle it. It's just a different texture that he can handle, but he will try it. Whereas years back, he would be like gagging away, right? Because he couldn't handle it. So that was hard when we were trying to work through him, and then the other two. Now, my second child would eat anything. He still eats anything. And my daughter can be definitely more picky. But the thing I look at is she looks a lot like my son, Matthew. So they look alike, they act alike. So I definitely think their genes are, you know, they have the same genes that, you know, maybe my second son didn't get all the same chromosomes and genes that they got. Yeah. It's just kind of wild. And I look at it and I'm like, yep, she's a lot like her brother. Yeah. And you know, she looks at me sometimes, she's like, Mom, I don't like that texture. I'm like, okay, I get it, you know, so let's try it and see, and then we work through it. But no, not to the point where Matthew was at all. Yeah. Matthew had he was failure to thrive, and he had a lot of health challenges, reflux and all that went along with it.
If you don't mind my asking, because I think this might resonate with the listeners, I imagine there was a lot of worry for you when he was little. You know?
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, he was my first child. And there was no internet. He was born in 1998. He was January of 1998. There was no internet. So I went to pediatrician to figure out what was going on, and I wouldn't give up. And I kept saying, this isn't right. He shouldn't be throwing up all the time. He shouldn't be projectile vomiting. He shouldn't be this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. He's not gaining weight. He's not doing this. He's not crawling. He's not doing the things he should be doing, right? And so it was definitely a challenge to get to the point where when he was 1 is when we figured out, we took him to a developmental pediatrician, and she was probably in her 60s then, so she's probably in her 80s now. Yeah. And she looked at me and she said, oh, he has sensory integration dysfunction. And I was like,
yeah, like it was no big deal, like you should know all about it.
Yeah, like she's like, oh, and I'm like, huh? Yeah. Say what? And she said, yeah. And she was like, he needs feeding therapy. He needs sensory integration therapy. He needs physical therapy. He needs, and she would rattle all the things he needed. And I just sat there in like total disbelief, right? Because I had no clue what was going on, and neither did the pediatricians that I took him to. So I finally found one that would admit it, like, I don't know what's causing this. We need to find out, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's when he sent us to the developmental pediatrician, and then we got the help we needed. And it took a long time. There was several years of therapies and all that.
Yeah. Can you recall in hindsight, I'm just curious, like an age or a stage where you kind of realize like, oh, like he's going to be okay. Like we're going to get through this.
Probably, oh goodness. Well, he was undiagnosed with ADHD till he was 7 or 8. So I knew there was a piece that was missing. So he was crawling, he was walking, we got him all past that. He was doing better with eating. We had taken him to like a naturopath, and we were doing all these supplements, and we were doing all this stuff to help boost him up. He severe eczema, and he had asthmatic stuff going on. So we were trying to pull things out of his diet and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we were getting somewhere, but we were still he was a top. I mean, I always call him my top. He never stopped. I couldn't get him to sit. I couldn't get him to do anything for any length of time. And I knew something wasn't right. I'm like, this isn't getting better. We're missing something. And that's when we took him in. Probably he was 7 or 8. And then we had him diagnosed with ADHD. And then things started to work when we figured out what was really going on. And then we could pair the two. And then, of course, that's through all my research, I found out it's very normal for a kid with ADHD to have all these other comorbid disorders, right? At the time, I was like, okay, I do have a nephew with ADHD. He's 30 now. So it can run in families. And that was part of it too. I'm like, well, maybe he does have that. And then we kind of figured things out through that way. So I'd have to say probably, it took a while. I'd have to say maybe 99 until we had him on an even keel with the ADHD and the sensory processing.
Yeah.
Probably 9. And then, of course, he went into puberty, and then that changed again. All the hormones changed, and that meant, all of his impulsivity kind of geared up again, and he was a teenager. So, and then you have to figure out, well, what's teenager?
Right.
What's this?
Yep.
Right. So, honestly, I looked at my husband the other day. He's in college right now, and he comes home, and he's just so grown up now at 20, and I'm like, even the past year, I see such a difference. And I'm just like,
yeah, right.
I mean, he's 20, right? Yeah. And I'm like, because we had a hard go when he was in his, when he was 15, 16, 17, we had a hard time then too.
Yeah.
Anxiety, depression,
yeah.
Talking about suicide. I mean, we had a hard road then. So yeah, I'd have to say past year it's been good. And he misses us, which, when he went away to college, it was more of a, yeah, mom, mom and dad don't know anything. I'm on my own now. I'm great. Right. And now a couple of years later, he's like, he leaves and he's like, I miss you guys already. He comes home for the weekend and he texts me, I miss you already. And I'm like,
20 years you waited for that.
20 years I waited.
Oh my God. Well, thank you for sharing that. That was really personal, and I understand the sensitivity of it, but I feel that many of our listeners do have small children who may or may not be struggling with the latest issue or something more serious that probably needs to hear the light at the end of the tunnel is likely there. It doesn't mean it's going to be an easy road, but someday you may be exhaling in your kitchen with your husband.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, thank you, Lord, because he's doing well now. And and on the other hand, my middle one's always been just that even keel, just there, right? And just always been that mom, it's gonna be okay, and Matthew will be okay, and just the sweet, and so it's just been they're so different. They're so different.
Isn't that amazing? I can already even see it with my children. Well, that's great. I mean, think about every single meal you planned for each of your children over the 20 years. All you did to give them the best opportunity. I mean,
I know. I think about that and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am such an expert at this already. And
yeah. Well, that being said, like, what could you give me some just, simple meals that you guys love to repeat with the kids that everybody kind of is used to,
we love chicken fingers, and what I'll do is I'll just get the chicken tenders that you can get at the grocery store, and I dredge them in just simple. I can't do milk, but they can do milk and eggs, and I can do eggs, so I'll dip mine in eggs, and they'll dip them in eggs and milk, and we'll fry them up with avocado oil or olive oil. Sometimes we bake them, depending on the kid. Like my son will say, Mom, I really want your fried chicken tonight. And that's their fried chicken is fried in some olive oil, fried in some avocado oil. And, I put Italian seasoning on it, and they love dipping it in ketchup or whatever, or barbecue sauce or something. And so I do that a lot. They love that. And then we'll do a salad, like a simple salad, or we'll have fruit with it. We do baked beans. We love that. I'll make homemade baked beans. Sometimes I just get the organic, out of the can. Right. So, and it's just, that's one meal that they all love. And they love, my dad was Italian, so my dad is passed, but he makes great, homemade, meatballs and stuff. So they love when I make my homemade meatballs and sauce and things like that. And I'll do the spiralizer. I'll do the zucchini. I'll do that as noodles for me. Or I'll do spaghetti squash, and I do that for them, but I mix it with traditional pasta for them. So they'll have like some of like spaghetti squash or zucchini, and then they'll get the regular whole grain pasta or whatever, because they like that. So I do that for them. So that's a really simple one to make as well. And one thing that I've made recently for us is, like, for me, I'll make the cauliflower pizza, and then my daughter likes to bake now. So she'll start making pizza crust, and we do homemade pizza. And we put different veggies on it, and I'll do the uncured pepperoni, because they love pepperoni. So I'll do, we can do uncured. So we'll do that. Turkey pepperoni, something like that. So we'll do that a lot too. Yeah. So, I just kind of, vary it up. I meal plan every week. I really love meal planning, because I don't want to come home at 4:00 in the afternoon or be done with a client call, and say, what am I going to make? And everything's frozen. I just, especially because they're into sports and they're into, basketball, and my daughter has done gymnastics. And so we have to be ready to move, right? And keep things going. So, and my husband's a home inspector, so his hours vary. So he could be out late, he could be home, during the day, and then work late in the afternoon. So, I have to kind of have a plan. Otherwise, it's just not going to fly. So I love meal planning. So I do that every week, and I order groceries. That's like my new thing, is I order groceries.
You order them to be delivered?
Well, I actually order them and then I pick them up. Wow. So, so I'll order them and pick them up, and I love it. It's been my new thing this year that I've allowed myself to do. Instead of spending time at the grocery store, I'm like, okay, I can let them pick out this, and I can let them pick out that, and it's going to be okay. And so I've released that, and I really love it. It's really helped save tons of time for me.
That's great. I love the 2 tips you just gave about meal planning and ordering the food, because my next question would have been, what are some tips for eating a little bit healthier in your household, and what has worked for you? And, we've only recently started having moms on who have teenage age kids or school age kids, where they're very active after school or even evening. And I always wonder what that really looks like, and what time everybody finally settles in, and what time you actually eat, and how often you actually eat together. So if you would just touch on that a little bit.
Sure. Like, my kids usually get home from school. Well, they're off now. Of course, they're out of school right now. But when they normally get homeschooled, they'll be home about 3:30 is the latest. But some of the elementary schools around here go till 4. So, and then they're starving, right? Because my daughter, they eat early. They eat like at 10 something in the morning. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're eating lunch at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's crazy. But they're in school at 7, right? They're in school at 7:30 in the morning. My son goes to school at 8. So they're gone. And so when they come home, they're starving. So I try to make sure that they're eating something like a protein and maybe a fruit or a veggie, so that it will give them the energy that they need to kind of get through to dinner, maybe get their homework started, and just have about an hour or so before we eat. We try to eat like 5:30. It depends on, their schedule. Like, my son has basketball practice usually at 6. So I can make sure he's eating. He'll go from 6 to 8. And I'm like, okay, we need to make sure that you're fed dinner early, right? And so he'll eat his dinner. And then if my husband's home, we'll all sit down and eat together. If he's not home, I'll just feed the kids and I'll eat with them. And then, leave my husband's food, wherever it is, in a plate where he can heat it up. And then I take the kids to do their activities. The other thing is crock pots. I love my crock pot in the fall. I absolutely love it when the kids are, because I plan it, right? And then either I'll plan it like the night before, like if I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to be a crazy day, I need to have it in the crock pot in the fridge the night before, so then all I have to do is pop it in the crock pot and turn it on. So that's, I love that. When that works well, that schedule, it's prime.
No, I agree with you.
And then, you know, working on school lunches, we always do lunches the night before. We always make them the night before. Cannot do that, handle that in the morning. It's just not in my wheelhouse to do that, because I get up and I work out in the morning. I'm up at 5 and I work out and I get my shower and I do my devotionals and I get the kids up, and there's no way I can be worrying about lunches and trying to get them a healthy breakfast and out the door. So we always do that the night before, whatever, you know, we always make our lunches the night before. So we do that for sure the night before. And then, you know, we try and do as many meals together as a family we can. We used to do a lot more because they were little, right? And they didn't have anything. Now it's when Matthew comes home, we definitely enjoy that more, right? Because he's home and we're all together. And if one's gone, if one has something, then we still make it about whoever is there. Like my daughter will go to youth group. My son might not have practice that night. So then we just sit with him and talk about his day, right? So it's just important to really connect with the kids as much as you can at the dinner table, because they scatter, right? They just kind of go off and do whatever. So especially as they get older.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So if you don't mind, do you pretty much own the cooking, the prep, the cleaning, or how does it work with divvying up maybe with other people in the household?
Yeah, I own the cooking pretty much. My daughter's starting to get into it more. When she takes what used to be home economics, now I think they call it consumer and family at her school. I know, like, it's called home ec, but it's called consumer and family. So she does a lot of baking and stuff there, and she'll come home and want to do that more. But when she hasn't done it in a while, it's kind of like, no, whatever, right? So I do the cooking. My husband really pitches in and helps with the cleanup. The kids do as well. They'll do the dishes, the dishwasher, empty the dishwasher, load the dishwasher. They're in charge of all their own laundry, doing their own laundry, washing, drying, putting away. If they don't have something, I'm like, dude, you know, you're 15, almost 16. If you don't have your basketball shorts, it's because you didn't wash them. You know, so I'm like, I'm sorry.
You are my best friend.
Get them out of the dirty clothes, because not happening, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I love that about you right now.
Yes, I know. So
You make me feel justified. Yeah.
Yeah, they do their own clothes. I taught them to wash their own bed sheets. I'm like, guys, you need to strip your bed. You need to get it in, because it's been a week. You need to wash your sheets weekly, you know, and get them in the wash machine and all that. So we do that. And I've gotten to the point where if they don't do it, that's on them, right? And I look at him and I'm like, how long has it been since you washed your sheet, Daniel? And he'll be like, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, it's got food stains on it. You need to get it in the wash.
Dirty feet of it on them.
Yeah. So it's just teaching them little steps, right? And just trying to get them independent. And it's hard, and there are days it's easy and there are days it's hard. Like yesterday, my daughter cleaned up the whole kitchen for me, and I didn't even have to ask her. I was like, wow. And they do a great job when they do it too, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
So,
You are rocking this thing. You put your time in when they were little. I'm certain you did. I'm certain.
Yeah. It's a matter of just teaching them, right? And teaching them in one step at a time. They do get there.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned just a little bit back about ordering your food online.
Yes.
I would be curious if you're comfortable sharing, you know, what you have as a general budget for food.
Sure. At the one grocery store, we usually spend about $120 a week. That's just when we go to that store. Now, when I have to go to there's a natural grocers here that I have to go to for my stuff, and that can run probably 70 to 75 a week just for my stuff alone. So probably around 220, 230, 240 in and around there, depending on the week. You know, I look at some of the things like, say, for example, you know, if I'm going to make chocolate chip cookies or whatever, because we do eat chocolate chip cookies, but we just do it a little bit different than, you know, maybe the next person. Maybe I'll buy the organic ones or whatever and all that. But for me, you know, my chip, just those, I love chocolate. I love dark chocolate. It's my favorite. It's dark chocolate. So I'll buy these dark chocolate chips. It's $5.79 for a bag, right? Because I have to have the ones without all the allergens. So that's where it can be a little bit more pricier. But it just depends on what we're ordering. You know, I mean, the standard order is usually about 130 a week for the 4 of us, because Matthew's on his own right now. And when he comes home, of course, you know, we spend more because we're getting more meats and things like that. We don't do a lot of meat. We do a lot of chicken. We do some fish. We do meatless meals. We'll do like one night a meal Italian, one night a week we'll do Italian, usually Mexican. So I just kind of switch it up and kind of whatever is on sale. And we kind of I'll look at the sales and kind of incorporate what's on sale with menus, things, favorites, and things like that. And I love to try new recipes. Some of them fly, some of them don't. You know, my husband will say, that's a keeper. And then the other times he'll say, yeah, no. Like, okay.
Yeah, the code word is, you don't have to make that again.
Yeah. Yeah, I love trying new recipes. I've loved cooking. I've always loved cooking. So I think it's just my love language. I just love to give and nurture them with good food because I know what it does for their bodies. So
yeah, absolutely. Good for you.
I love it.
Yeah. I know you're a label reader.
I am.
Do you have a couple of, maybe a brand or a couple of items that you would say is sort of the best thing you can get if you're not going to get fresh, like 2 packaged foods that might do in a pinch?
Oh, let me think through that one. If you're not able to get fresh, frozen is always better than canned, for sure. I do like to go to like Sam's Club or you know, Costco and get they have these big bags of frozen fruit. So if you can't get fresh, you can always get like organic blueberries, because organic blueberries fresh are outrageously expensive and you're getting a small little container, right? So you can get a big thing for $10 of frozen organic blueberries, and they're phenomenal and I love them. So for sure, for smoothies, because my kids love fruit smoothies.
Okay.
Hide things in the smoothies too. So that's what I did with Matthew. We did green smoothies with him and he loved them. And that's how I got a lot of nutritious things in for him. Yeah. And I used organic fruit and he loved them. So that would be my thing, is if you can't get fresh, get frozen and get it at the bigger, you know, like the Sam's Club or the Costco, because they sell them, you know, that way for sure. And then if you can't make, you know, pizza from scratch, they do make some really good organic pizzas where you can get a whole grain crust and you can make sure that there's lots of veggies on there, or you can even add your own veggies. Sometimes like the margarita pizza. Yeah. My kids love the margarita pizza, and they're getting some tomatoes and they're getting, you know, the cheeses and the dairy for their and all that. And it's whole grain. So you just have to kind of read your labels and see, you know, because it's better than the takeout, right? And it's going to cost a lot less than and it's better for you than takeout. So
yeah. Given your diet, because we follow a similar diet, how do you guys get to eat out much, or how do you handle that when you're with your special diet?
Yeah, there's I mean, it's gotten better over the years. It has gotten better. My mom was diagnosed with celiac probably almost 20 years ago. And back then there was nothing, you know, nothing at all. I mean, the bread was horrible and it was just, yeah. And since now, of course, I'm grain-free as well. So I just really specifically say, just ask your server. Usually they have a gluten-free menu or a dairy-free menu or something like that. I do a lot of things lettuce wrapped. We have a place here that, you know, I love to go out and I'll get things lettuce wrapped. Like I'll have a grilled chicken and they'll lettuce wrap it, and I'll put avocado on it, and I'll hold the cheese and I'll hold the mayo and all the stuff that I can't have. But, you know, it's just something, also the experience of not having to cook it. Yeah. Right. And it's just, it might be the same thing I would have made at home, but they're making it on an open grill and it tastes so much better.
Yeah.
because you're not cooking it.
Yeah,
So it's like a salad, you know, salad tastes so much better if, you know, you go somewhere else and have someone else make it for you. It's just
absolutely.
the way it is. So I just really, you know, always say, ask the server and really let them know this is an allergy. Because sometimes people say, well, I can't have that. And they'll ask me, well, is it an allergy? Is it a preference? I'm like, oh no, it's an allergy. And then they're really super careful about it. So we don't go out to eat a lot though. We're pretty much homebodies, and maybe if we go up where my son is, we'll go out to eat up there,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But we don't just pretty much stay and eat. So
Yeah, no, I get it. We're the same way. If we go out, it's like a whole to do. My kids think like we bought a house or something.
I know.
You know, what did we do? Why are we out?
Why are we not eating at home tonight, Mom? Right.
Yeah. I would love for you to take a minute to talk about your health coaching and your niche. And if you want, or if you're up for it, maybe a couple of tips you can send to anyone who might have a child with ADHD or SPD.
Yes.
Or
Yep. Exactly. So I became a certified health coach in 2013, and I decided to do that because I saw the changes that I was able to help my son with through the feeding therapy and through just working with him one-on-one on introducing new foods into his diet, taking things away, prepping different meals for him, and just really saw the power of food as medicine. So that's when I decided to get certified, because I thought, I love doing this. I want to help other people. And really my niche is working with families of kids who have ADHD, sensory processing disorder, OCD, and ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder. Those brain disorders really thrive on good nutrition, and gut health is huge with these families. So I work with them either in a group coaching situation or one-on-one family coaching, and we go through, okay, so, you know, like we talk about if any food allergies that they have or sensitivities or what I see as red flags. And like I had met with a mom probably a few weeks back, and she for sure thought her child had ODD. And once we started talking, she had no diagnosis at all. And once we started talking, I was like, you know, you're telling me things that I think she probably has more of sensory processing disorder. And, you know, I know that because in between all of this, I've worked as a special needs assistant director at our church. And doing that, I went to several classes for ODD. So I'm certified in practical strategies and interventions for kids with ODD. So when she told me some of the things that she was seeing, I was like, we do need to get her diagnosed for sure, but I'm seeing that the sensory processing is instigating this and making her get upset and be angry, right? Mm-hmm. So we talked about that. And so I have strategies and tools in place that I can help people try to figure out that puzzle piece. It's a puzzle. And I look at Matthew, and he was a puzzle, and it was very hard to figure out what was going to fit in there. I am not a doctor. I don't diagnose or anything like that. I just basically say, this is what it sounds like to me, but we do need to get your child evaluated if they don't have an evaluation or a diagnosis. Once we get that diagnosis, then it's so much easier for me to come in and say, okay, that makes sense. Let's try this. And then we work on diet. We work on lifestyle strategies. Bedtime strategies are huge with families of kids with special needs. That's really hard for kids. Calming down, getting them to sleep, which is huge for the brain to heal. And so I work with them on that. I also have created a program for picky eaters that based on what I did with my son, I created a whole program called Grocery Store to Table. And it's a video series which takes people through the whole steps to help their child accept new foods into their diet in a non-threatening way. So that is something I also created. And as far as tips, I would have to say, nutritionally, the brain needs essential fatty acids is huge for all children, all adults. It's huge. Our modern American diet is really, it's called the standard American diet. So it is sad, unfortunately, because we get so many omega-6s. We don't get the omega-3s that we need in the fish oils. It's just not in our diet. And so we have to supplement with, some good omegas for our kiddos is huge, and probiotics is huge. Every kiddo, every adult should be on a probiotic. It's just gut health is huge. It's where 80% of your neurotransmitters are made in the gut. So people don't understand that. That's where it's not made in the brain, it's made in the gut. And then as far as your 70% of your immune cells are in the gut. So you have to have a healthy gut, a healthy lining, so that you can fight off those colds and all that stuff in the wintertime, and that your brain functions and we don't have, all these fluctuating things going on. So it's just super important to have good gut health for brain function as well. So those are my 2 tips for sure, is get your kiddos on that good probiotic and a good omega.
Yeah. Amen.
For sure.
I'm with you on that. Where can we find you?
You can find me on the web. I have Tree of Life, www.treeoflifehealthcoaching.net is my website. You can also find me on Facebook. I just on my personal page as Mary C. Tate, Tate. Also, I do run a free Facebook group for any families of kids who have these disorders, and it's called A Journey to Empowerment for families of kids with ADHD, sensory processing disorder, OCD, or ODD. So I have a free Facebook group in there where we strategize and we work on support and non-judgmental. And we're starting a new series this month. We have guest speakers coming in and chatting about keeping your kiddos learning going through the summer. So we have learning specialists coming in, and just different fun things that we've got planned for the summer. So
that's really neat. That's really neat.
Yeah.
So we can reach out to you if we have interest in joining the group or any.
Yes. Yeah. You can reach out. You can request to join at any time. So it's there, and would love to have anybody who's interested.
Awesome. Well, I thank you so much for your time. This has been really enlightening for me, and also reassuring that, so many of us are on the right track. And
Yes.
I think it's beautiful that you took your own challenge in your life and you decided to turn it back and help other people, because there probably wasn't somebody who could say, here's your, just take these steps and you'll get there. It was all you just knowing in your gut that you needed to help him. And
and that was pretty much it, just knowing in my gut that I needed to help him. And that's kind of where we all stood. It's just kind of one step at a time.
I love it.